onto your seats because we're gonna get going, and time will be flying because we have an interactive and fun session planned. Um, with us today is James Altman. Let's get to it. James, welcome and thank you for joining us. James is from Jackrabbit Learning Experience. He's the president and chief strategy officer there. And he has a rich background in learning design and strategy. But before we dive into that, I'd like to just also mention that James is one of the kindest humans that I've had the pleasure of working with. And to illustrate that, a little story of how we met a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I was reaching out to potential partners via cold emails, and James was one of those, one of those potential partners. And I just had a mix-up. I'd been sending so many emails. I had a mix-up. I mismatched James's name with the company that he was with. I think I had you down for a university or something. But James was so kind. He turned it into a little joke, and he still agreed to meet with a stranger from South Africa. And I'm incredibly happy that you did, James. So thank you for that. So that being said, working with James, it means that you're getting access to a really brilliant, strategic, and creative mind that is a serious thinker. But it also means that you'll definitely be having some fun along the way, and possibly, if I take the meetings that we've had as any indication, you'll be falling down a few rabbit holes, or should I say jackrabbit holes? Puns are lame. But yeah, so thank you, James. So James has been involved in teaching and learning for over 20 years. He's experienced in the field, and his expertise spans across sectors. And he's helped shape the learning landscape at really leading organizations such as Northwestern University and the big 2U Incorporated. These days, however, James is partner and president at Jackrabbit Learning Experience, like I mentioned, and there he spearheads strategic initiatives that drives growth and results for the organizations that they partner with. So James understands both the strategic and the operational sides of learning and development, and this makes him a trusted advisor for companies that they work with who are looking to enhance and elevate their learning and development programs. So his work at Jackrabbit has helped organizations from diverse industries, from healthcare to finance, to design effective learning programs, to enhance their learning experiences, which is what James is really passionate about, and actually to build the internal capacity to ensure long-term sustainability. And that's what today is all about. So just quickly, the purpose of this webinar is to really just introduce you guys to the 6 key domains of learning and development that James and his team have identified as being key impactors of the learning and development function and its effectiveness. And then we'll be looking at common challenges in 2 of these domains specifically. So the people domain and the technology domain. And then very exciting, we'll be looking at the GPS, so guidance, people, and systems framework that Jackrabbit have developed, and how this can actually help to empower organizations in these different L&D domains, and specifically, technology and people that we'll be addressing today, to build capacity so that your team, as it is, can do more with the resources that you have and be more effective and have a bigger impact in your organization. So without further ado, James, we're incredibly excited to get going. I'm handing over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nika. That's such a nice intro, and it's been great working with you. So all the nice things you say just come right back around. It's always fun and interesting. As a very simple, quick, personal thing, Nika does a wonderful job as we meet regularly, educating me on the 7 biomes of South Africa. 7, is that right?
I think it's 9.
9 biomes. Sorry, I guess I haven't been learning that well. Showing all the various landscapes of South Africa. I hope I get there because it looks like we have a strong contingent from South Africa here today. So thank you so much for joining. The big picture of this of GPS is that we've built over the last 6 years at Jackrabbit a way to, as Nika said, empower your organizations. We have traditionally been a services organization, meaning we do add capacity when we come on as a services corporation to build courses and do strategic consulting. But we've really decided that there is so much to be done in learning and development around the world that we should be doing more to empower organizations and help them build capacity. So that's what GPS is about. While we like the idea that GPS as a global term, people know and think that's the thing that's going to get them where they're going. We like that, how it makes people think of that GPS gets you where you're going. For us, it's actually an acronym for guidance, people, and systems, which is a way of thinking around all the things that you need to do that, to build capacity within your organization. So that's why it's called GPS, and that's where these domains come from. And these 6 domains are the things that we have researched and applied in our work with all of our partners around the world to validate that these are the areas that you need to have strength in order to be a successful learning and development, or even more broadly, a learning team of many kinds. So I think we're focused a lot more on learning and development with this audience, but it is actually a broad framework that can be used for learning teams of many various kinds, including like extended enterprise type teams. We're going to focus on 2 because each one of these can be months of work, as you probably all know with the work that you've done. But we're going to quickly focus on the kind of the problems, and then the challenges, and then the solutions within the domains that we've identified. And we want to empower you through this, so we're going to be providing resources. I'm going to mention them within the time that we have. I won't be able to go super deep. And as you hear things that might be useful, please keep track of them. We're definitely going to send some from this webinar, but I'm also happy to send more. The point is to help teams do better with GPS, and that's really what we want to do, so that we have other solutions within these that I might mention. And if something triggers you to say, oh, wow, that could be really useful for us, just take a note and request it, and we'll send you the guide, the resources, the templates, even the tools themselves. We're really trying to publish all of this stuff and get it out there for people so that they can use it. So we're going to focus on people and technology today. There is an assessment. The link is there on our website. The idea of the assessment is for you to understand your strengths as an organization within these areas, because within these areas, if you have strength within all of them, you'll be cranking, you'll be clicking and getting everything done that you want to get done. You'll, of course, therefore, will be serving your learners and getting them to the outcomes that you need. So we're going to do a little version of that now. You can go to the website and take the full version, but I want to get some engagement and hear from you. There's not a ton of people here, so I would love for you to be able to talk and at the front end of this, so I can get to know what you're doing. But if you're more like a chat person, feel free to put your answers in there. I'm going to read each one of these questions, and what I would love to know is, do you feel like would you give yourself 1 star, not so great, have some work to do in that area, or would you give yourself 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars? 5 stars is you're killing it in that area. And these are 4 questions of the assessment that we use for GPS. So I'm going to read each one, and hopefully everyone gets a chance to answer it. I'll give you a few seconds to put your answers in the chat or say out loud. And if you want to say out loud, I would love to hear why you think that. So the first one is that within the technology, first 2 are technology domain. We regularly integrate new and emerging digital tools into our learning solutions. 1 to 5 stars. And again, feel free to put it in the chat and or say out loud. Maybe even come on camera and show yourself and talk about what you're doing to do that and why you gave yourself that rating. We regularly integrate new and emerging digital tools into our learning solutions.
We try.
So let's try. What would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Innovation is in our title.
So 4.
I would say 4. Yeah, 4.
Fantastic. Anyone else? 3?
I'll have to say a 4.
Great. Can you tell me a little more why, Brian?
Because most of our company is based in the digital realm, and what our business does is within communications. So we're constantly adapting, and we need to find different and new innovative ways to basically branch out and help our members of our team grow and learn within the organization.
Awesome. Is it? Sorry, I apologize. Is it A3, or are you willing to say how you're working with AI? I love seeing that. These are new tools, and we probably all feel the pressure. Audrey, okay, is that right? Thank you for answering. That's awesome. Is anybody willing to have a lower rating and willing to talk about the struggles that they've encountered in that? I know that might be harder to do. I will talk about this. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd say probably a 3, just because it can be difficult to make sure that you've got the time and the resources allocated to actually integrating the things, being able to test them, being able to roll them out, and everything that's involved with that, because it's not necessarily just your team who's involved. It might need to be IT, it might need to be other external stakeholders as well. So it isn't always quite as simple as we've all got the drive to do it, we're all interested in it, and we want to do these things, but then there can be other factors that also come into play.
Yeah, that's great. That's such a great point. Not only other people and other teams, but also sometimes that it's like we put all of these processes and systems in place, and it's almost like we end up building these walls that contain us, right? That we can't now explore and try new things because we put all of these things in place so that things are predictable, stable, reliable, and now we can't try stuff. Sarah, you raised your hand.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to speak on my own behalf, but I've just actually come off with a meeting with a client in Kuruman, which the South Africans will know is quite a rural area. And if I look at that, there's so much opportunity there, because we're actually dealing with employees that don't actually have laptops. So I've had an issue with people signing contracts. So they don't have the laptops to sign the contracts on, they've only got their phone. And then when we need it to be printed, the printer's not working. So if I look here, you see a lot of opportunity where people are sitting with the 1 star, because there's no integration and there's no digital tools.
No, yeah, wow, huge challenges. I do get sometimes hopeful with those situations where you see technology leapfrog, right? Like lots of places where when cell technology rolled out, there was no lines. They were never going to be able to get kind of actual, electrical cables to connect telephones. But then all of a sudden, cell phone technology leapfrogged, and they had more connectivity there than in other places because they were able to do that. So I do sometimes get hopeful for those situations. It's amazing they're connected without laptops, but now we have to serve mobile first users. So totally makes sense, or even more simple solutions. Civilian, is that right? Civilian?
Yeah, sorry, it's Kyle, actually, Kyle.
Okay, but you are a civilian, is that what you were saying?
True, yeah. No, honestly, I'd say that there's a lot of struggles in this area. So we as an organization, we are regularly researching and looking into new technologies and emerging digital tools. So researching and looking into it's great. The challenges come from our side as well, as that one, the actual implementation of them is getting to that next step becomes a challenge, but partially it's because of the culture that we actually need to develop first for learning and development within the actual organization as a whole. Normally what you would have is a group of people that are really keen to learn, but they're so busy, they don't have quote unquote time to learn. And there's a lot of challenges. We're actually trying to build the culture to enable these tools to do what they're so capable of doing.
Yeah, both really, really great points. The time challenge, time constraints. And I have another point, but I see Melandi's hand. So let's take Melandi and then we'll move on to the next question.
How are you guys doing? So I won't be saying much here, James, but what I wanted to say was sometimes it's just that we are so trapped on the old ways of doing things. Like, for example, in the company that I work for, a lot of things were done like paperwork. There's only such things such as like biometrics and as well as like a digital register in Excel that they use, but they really explore all the other tools because they feel so reliant and so comfortable with their way of doing things that sometimes it may be a bit of like a hustle just to put them into pace in terms of like e-learns, LMS, all these other options and tools that we do have available that can make learning and as well as evaluating and getting feedback from all these trainees that we have, and as well as other people that might like to do upskills, maybe as trainers or perhaps maybe management or leaders that might to be able to like to do any upskills or perhaps like to get into PAS. So I'll just say that sometimes it's perhaps the research, the right knowledge and understanding on how we can access these tools and how they can be able to change our way in terms of the learning and development, and perhaps put in more resources to create the glide path to grow the people that we want to focus on.
Yeah, really lots of great points. And I love the glide path. I love that idea that there's a roadmap and that there would be a lot of reasons why, right? So that's one of the questions, is regularly integrating new and emerging digital tools is a kind of, I think we're all excited and innovative, and it sounds like we're giving ourselves good kind of stars and being able to do it while recognizing challenges. But it's also really interesting to think, I think sometimes we get a strong impetus either from above or from the bottom up to do it, and don't always necessarily have the chance to ask why. What are the outcomes we're shooting for? Jacques, if it's okay, I'm going to move on to the next question and then you can tag in. Okay. So the next question is highly related because they're both in the technology domain. So what I want to do is just ask if there's any, just looking at the time, if there's any separation or any distinction people want to make in addition to what we just talked about. So the next question is, we're prepared for technology changes like the adoption of AI in the suite of our learning tools. So it's a slightly different rating because it's about being prepared for changes. AI took us by storm, everyone, for the last year, and it's clearly not going to stop and have a huge trajectory going forward, as opposed to having a kind of the innovative stuff we've talked about where we're regularly integrating tools. This is a little bit more about a preparatory stance. So does anybody have a distinction? It sounds like we got a pretty good innovative group, which is probably why you're all here listening to this and engaging in it, because you have been at organizations that have been able to, but we also heard challenges, like we built these calcified walls of systems around us and are challenged with the time of our learners. So is there a distinction, Jacques, is that related to what you might be saying?
Yeah, a little bit. I was stuck on the glide path example, which I really liked, and I said something in the chat. I didn't expand a whole lot on it, but even to question number 2, I think it applies. The adoption of AI, for example, as in the suite of learning tools, works for an isolated department like ours, but it's very difficult and challenging to have that adoption rate go up across an institution, especially ones that are really large, like the one where I work at Duke University.
Yeah.
It feels like I like the glide path, but it feels more like a boulder going up a mountain sometimes.
Another analogy that I heard by a futurist years ago was like an extremely large ocean liner, right? To turn, I mean, in America, we saw this, the inability for a boat to stop or turn caused the destruction of the bridge because it's literally the inertia of the boat, right? In its direction can take an enormous amount of energy and an enormous amount of time. But a school of potentially tens of thousands of sardines can all turn in 1 second. And combined, they could be a similar amount of size and almost mass, maybe. But because of the individual yet coordinated power, they can turn a lot faster. And using that as a methodology can result in quicker changes as opposed to thinking about the inertia of the mass. I'm going to go on to the next two, and just for time, I'm going to combine them if people are willing to kind of think a little more flexibly. So these are both people, but there's two aspects of it, and I'm going to just ask your brain to do a little bit of a mishmash as you rate yourselves. So I'm going to read them. The people in our learning organization are doing the right work for their skill set and are doing the work they want to be doing. So this is, you can kind of imagine, right, that their responsibilities are well matched. They're in the right seat, so to speak, meaning they're motivated and find themselves in the zone in their work a lot of the time, as opposed to kind of fighting against their work. And then the next one is the people in our learning organization are ready for the changes. You can see how they're related, because if people are happy with their work and are well assigned to their duties and well fit for their duties, they're probably more ready for changes that might occur in the industry. So if you think of those two questions as aligned, just like to see a couple people, maybe some of the people that haven't written or said anything yet, if you're willing. I won't say any names. Maybe I will say names. Just kidding. Anybody, just one or two, just so we can kind of get an idea. I love how innovative everybody is, but we heard some challenges on the technology. What about your people, your teams, your peers, your leaders?
Perhaps for this one, we can just do an anonymous rate. Well, not anonymous, but a rating in the chat, if anyone is willing. How many stars would you give yourself in that area?
All right. Thanks, Jack, for volunteering. 3 stars. So not as good. Oh, look at that. You broke the ice, and then everyone pours their answers in. All right. Cool. 3, 3, 3. Oh, interesting. Okay. So it's funny. We heard a little bit more 4s, I think, in the technology. So I will tell you this. I was going to volunteer this if nobody literally answered. When I do this, and when we get our answers, people is one of the largest challenge. It's one of the lowest scores that we get in our assessment. And it's complicated. So that's one to be focused on today. So I think we can move forward having a good understanding. I'll try to remember the names and organizations, but let's keep the conversation going. I'll bring the challenges up rather than elicit them from you when we get there. So I think these things are obvious. In terms of using this framework, the goals are clear, right? You want to align and elevate. You want to have the strongest L&D team that you can. And with just the people domain and just the technology domain, you can get to a place where you can de-risk things like economic uncertainty, like the ups and downs of the resources that come into L&D, or prepare for rapid advancements for technology. You can be more nimble. Navigate these budget changes that might come down from on high, or just adapt to the way that your teams are working. Now, all of a sudden, we got a lot more remote people since the pandemic, and how does that affect your team, and what kinds of things might you need to be doing with them? So I think generally, even in your gut, the benefits of being on top of these domains, but it's worth reiterating because the rest of what I'm going to say may, for the rest of this time, I kind of assume you'll say, yeah, like I know about that thing. Here's what's really interesting. I talked to a friend of mine and I said, we're doing this GPS thing, and I walked her through it, and she said, and I said, as I finished, I was kind of like, this was a year ago or so. This is like the basics, right? Like these are just the things you need to do to have your L&D team where it should be. Is it too simple? Is it too basic? And her comparison was the challenge of weight loss, which is like, we all pretty much know exactly what to do, and we almost all struggle with it to some degree, being where we want to be on that scale. And therefore, we need systems. We need to be empowered. We need to be enabled. We need to be motivated. And that a lot of what we're going to talk about in terms of responses to, or solutions as we call it within technology and people, are things you know of. And what this is here now in terms of a system is a system you can follow to do what you already know you need to do, because having a system to do it helps you. It helps people, it helps humans get where they're going. So let's talk about some of the challenges. We've already mentioned some of them, but let's just go through the challenges in the people domain on the next slide. If you don't have people in the right seat that we talked about when we were judging ourselves on using the stars, you're going to have misalignment of team skills, right? Just one person that's not in the right seat can have these reverberations and ripples out into your organization that you all can feel. You've all been either probably in the seat or next to the person in the seat that's like, I just have too much. You might all right now feel like you have too much to do. But then you also may have times or positions that you've been in where you're like, I could do a lot more. I could provide a lot more value, but my role is not right. I'm being held back. And that is also just as detrimental as being too busy or over allocated. And then we're all in this world where just the skills that are rolling out, AI is the big one, but there's plenty more in terms of what is changing and what we're learning, and how we need to keep updated. So let's talk about what we can do. Let's not just be mired in the challenges. And again, these are things you probably know about. Being in L&D, developing people is what you all do. But then it's sometimes it's a case of we have an expression. I don't know if everyone in all of your various countries have similar expressions, but the shoemaker's children have no shoes. It's a version of that, right? That even though that is that person's profession, they're so busy making shoes for other people that they don't make shoes for themselves or for their kids. And you all are spending your days making sure people have the learning and development that they need, but your team or you may not have it as much. So these things but let's reiterate them and talk about how they might work. So skill mapping, creating job families and responsibilities is something that we have employed at Jackrabbit and deployed with our clients. I have on the next slide just a couple of visual examples, but these are more of an inspiration for you to ask for them. So we'll provide some of these resources by default at the end of this, but as I mentioned at the very beginning, take a note of things where you would like to have these things, because we're going to share anything and everything that empowers you to get where you're going from our side. So it's just a visual example, but to talk about what job families are, just as if it's not familiar or as a reminder if it is, we have categories of areas of the skills that would be needed, being very clear about what those competencies are, and then an allocation or designation of where those skills might be deployed at levels of the responsibility. So we talk about learning experience designers a lot. Probably you have a version of that, instructional designer, learning experience designer. And if we talk about a particular competency, convincing, I'm going to just kind of make a simple version of this competency. Sometimes it's your job to kind of convince your client, and that can be an internal client or a boss or an external client, of the right approach within learning and design. Because as a learning experience designer, you know that if that's that competency, let's say you're very early in your career, that might not be where you're at. You might not jump right to that skill level. But by the time you're probably past associate, maybe level 2 or level 3, definitely a leadership role, you should be nailing that competency. So checking that box at higher levels within a job family will be critical. So how does that correlate? Those kinds of things connect to people knowing that they're in the right seat and evaluating that on a regular basis with the members of the team, what those competencies are, having open discussions about them, where, for example, the teams we consult with or have built on our side at Jackrabbit are telling us, well, I'm doing this thing, this competency, you're not really kind of defining it here. Shouldn't we put that in there? And that's great. That's a collaborative effort to say, oh, you're actually helping define the role that you're in a way, in a system, so that we're all aligned. So job families can be really powerful. And on projects, RACI charts, a responsibility matrix. If you haven't used or heard of RACI, RACI, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, are specific designations within a project on each role. And that can really help make a difference if you are not empowering those people that may have more to offer. They may be in a project management role, but they could be accountable for technical analysis on a project just because that's in their personal skill set. So it's a great way to use structure and systems, but also get the most out of people. The next one is related, and you can identify gaps with things like job families, but there's also a lot of opportunity in things like planning and forecasting. So if you assess the skills people have, I mentioned the project manager one that may have particular skills to apply to the job. The second one here, team capacity forecasting, can give you a really good idea, right? So if you're thinking literally about the hours somebody might spend on the weeks of a project, their role and their responsibilities within it will make a very big difference. If you do have this project manager who happens to be quite technical and can do technical QA on the project, even be analyzing some of the code, if there's HTML embeds or other things within a learning project, if that project manager can do it, they're going to have to use more hours, right? And then that their time is taken up, and that chart is a tool that we use called Harvest, but there are ways to be able to, we've built this tool in other formats for other clients to be able to plan over the lifetime of a project. For a lot of our clients, it's critical that we meet budgets. For internal learning teams, you may not say, for this project, we have X amount of dollars, but you do know that you have a certain number of hours, right? Because you only have a certain number of people and a certain number of hours in the day. So doing that resource allocation can be critical for allocating those skills, assessing the skills that people have, allocating them appropriately, defining those roles, and then supporting them along the way. So that's critical. And then the last one here in terms of strategies or solutions for improvement is in building a high-performing team. Trust obviously needs to kind of pervade, but you also need to delegate and celebrate. So the last tool here, one of the ones that we use, is called Project Health Checks. And we have a template for this, if that's interesting for you, where everybody that's working on the project, particularly the lead, is assessing it on categories that we've defined that are critical for success. Things like open communication, active problem solving, actually meeting the hours versus the estimated hours. These types of categories are critical, and we ask everyone to do numerical ratings and then have a formula, a simple algorithm that evaluates whether the project is doing good on a weekly basis. And these are leading indicators, not outcomes, right? The project is not done. We're not saying learners are successful. We're saying, hey, there's like a problem with this SME not quite getting back to us on time. There's a small problem with every time I'm saying to my teammate that they're not quite understanding what I'm saying, and I'm getting a feeling that communication is not clicking. And that's a leading indicator that you're going to continue to have problems. The sooner you know about that, the better. So these project health checks are critical for the way that teams work, and we'd be happy to send you these templates for you if you find that useful. So these are a couple of solutions that we like to provide. We implement for our clients, all part of GPS. So that's people. It's 10:40, or here it's 10:40. We have 20 more minutes, and we wanted to leave some open time for Q&A, but I don't want a monologue. So let's just wrap up people. Within all of that stuff, I bet, and please confirm either out loud or in the chat, that you kind of know some of the stuff that I said. But what questions do you have? And another version of that would be, or observations, would be, how much of that do you have going? Are you doing it? When you gave yourselves 3 in the people domain, would you say that you're doing things like job families for skills, team capacity forecasting, and early indicators for project health, so that you know that a team is clicking? Would you still give yourselves a 3? I taught in the classroom long enough to know that I have to count to 10 inside my head quietly to wait until someone actually answers. Thank you. 3.5. We can improve. Of course, yes. I mean, we can almost always improve, right? But I will tell you this, when we have seen clients adopt these solutions, and Jackrabbit itself, and everyone also has ups and downs, but the more of these you adopt, there's kind of always room to grow. Thanks, Jock. 3.25.
I said 3.25 because I'll use your word, your monologue for the last 10 minutes gave me some hope.
Yeah, there's hope. Thanks, Jack. I think that's awesome. And Sari, if I'm pronouncing it the right way, really great point. Working in larger teams, you think we have to have these systems, but it's almost like a trick, because you're like, oh, it's a small team. Let's not put this reporting in place. And that I would argue that that's a risk, because by putting these reports in place and quantifying some of these things that you might feel like, it's okay, everything's okay, I talk to that person every day, we know what's going on. It can create some complacency. It can also create kind of a dynamic where you're willing to overlook because you work so closely with them. And it might not allow you to surface some of the conversations that might say, no, we can actually organize these a little bit better. And putting some of these systems in place might allow for those conversations a little bit more. All right, let's dive into the technology domain, and I might talk a little bit faster. So the role of technology, I think, we know how much it impacts what we're doing, but the thing that I'm going to say over and over again, which I would have assumed you would all agree with immediately, is we never quite get enough time and energy to ensure that our technology is aligned to the outcomes that we want. We often think that way at the beginning. What are the goals? Well, we need to make sure everyone is having the same learning experience. Okay, we need an LMS. Okay, let's look for an LMS that does these things. And then you get into the LMSs and you start to be debating these features and tools based on their own merits. And we don't often look back. And I'll give credit to my partner who's here, Jason Gorman, who has a phrase that says, we need systems that help us, quote, check our math. Like, if you know how the math problem is supposed to be done, then at any given point, no matter how many things you have written all over the page, you should be able to say, well, I know I got there because the right system got me there. And checking our math is also a really great kind of shorthand for saying, are we actually accomplishing the outcomes that we set out to? And systems and tools can lead us down these paths where we're like starting to evaluate it within whatever they have available, as opposed to, are we really accomplishing the goals that we wanted from the beginning? So rather than reading all of these, I'm just going to stick with that refrain. Let's go forward into some of the challenges that we might see. Obviously, you can end up with outdated technology. We can end up building these walls. I think it was Melandi talking about that we put all these systems into place, and then all of a sudden we're not flexible anymore. We can have people focusing, getting silos. Well, no, that's not my tool, right? I'm only focused on this tool. That's your problem. So we have scattered resources, and we can't have comprehensive measurement. Or we even just end up with inaccessible or ineffective learning platforms because they calcify around us as we're trying to do our work. So let's think about how we can fix some of these things. One of our critical tools that we use at the beginning of all this is what we call a learning tech stack audit or review. And it's basically a workshop where we do a very similar thing that we did at the beginning of this, where we rate critical outcomes in our ability to accomplish them with the systems that we have. So we'll provide this if you're interested in having this templated PDF around how to do it. And we usually get all of the stakeholders, right, which can be really challenging, especially when you have silos, but get them all in the room and they have to agree on the rating. So from one perspective, somebody might be saying, well, we're not accomplishing that goal, but within the conversation and with the debate, you can say, no, actually, we're doing a little bit better than 1 star. We're closer to 3, but it will get you that conversation between these stakeholders to talk about whether you actually are doing what you want to do with the tools. That tool will help you do things like evaluate accessibility, data security, have an understanding of whether it's actually available when you want it to be, which is much less of a problem these days, especially with cloud and duplication, but that still may not be true for every organization, especially regarding the challenge we talked about earlier with people literally not having laptops. And does that mean they're getting what they need? Does our central system supporting people that are on flip phones? And then thinking about, again, outcomes. So from this learning tech stack review, you can realign to what you need to have a good understanding of what you have that meets those needs, and then see the red areas, see the things that don't meet it, and create a roadmap going forward. So this tool it's quite a comprehensive tool. If you had all the stakeholders, would be a long workshop to get through, but it would provide you with a lot of data to figure out what your technology roadmap could look like going forward. Considering we're talking about technology and that our wonderful host happens to be a learning management system provider, I think it would probably be a great idea to hear a little bit about what this useful and easy to use learning management system provides. I can do a little bit more of a strong pitch because we're a Pluto user. And we work with Pluto clients and help them implement solutions on their platform. But Nika, you want to tell us a little bit more about Pluto?
Thank you, James. Yes, I couldn't resist the opportunity to put a slide in here and just talk to the system. But I think before I do mention, some of the capabilities, those things you can find on our website. You can review in your own time. But what I wanted to say is just, Pluto is really happy we know that there are a lot of learning management systems out there, and that, if you're not implementing this in the right way, if you're not doing these checks and audits, and you have a strong team, and building that capacity, that it becomes just another tool in another silo. So we're really excited about, partnering with organizations like Jackrabbit that really help to build that capacity to use this tool to its full capabilities. In the end, it's a tool meant to enhance your people's capacity. So rather than a punt for Pluto LMS being able to solve all of your technology challenges or challenges in your L&D domain, I think it's more, I'm just more here to say this is a tool that can be used by a strong team, and the emphasis, and in the hands of the right people, it can be really great. Thank you, Melanie, for joining, and goodbye. We'll be in touch. On that, James, thank you so much for everything you've shared. Just a few things I'd like to touch on that the system is capable of doing or just really helps with when it comes to the challenges we've been discussing today is, just that ability to really centralize all of your training resources and bring that together and strengthen your team's communication abilities in that sense as well, because now you have one centralized place where you're creating your training resources, where that's being hosted, where it's being updated. We've actually worked with a client who has a retail client who has over 900 stores in South Africa and across other African countries, and it's been so great to hear how they've been able to scale their training because of a centralized place where their resources get created and hosted. And then it's also actually freed up capacity of their team to be able to now focus on, they've been able to provide training, field training to their frontline workers, and they've been able to now have more capacity to focus on their HQ staff. So that's been something really encouraging to hear that the system can, make possible. Then in terms of your reporting, you have, with all of your resources in one place and your training being delivered on the system, you have now the ability to track and report what's happening, to keep track of how your learners are progressing, where they're struggling. And so when it comes to enhancing learning experiences, you have real-time data in terms of what's going on, doing those health checks in your training programs and being able to go, okay, cool, it's easier to report on this to stakeholders, but it's also easier to, keep track and to intervene when it's necessary. So see where learners are struggling and because you're not spending hours filling in spreadsheets and doing your reporting manually, there is enhanced capacity to do that, to actually continually be improving your learning programs. And then, quickly, I'll just touch on, user friendliness, usability, accessibility. We've really worked on making it an easy to use system. But then also something like a mobile app has been a real game changer. So being able to stick with the times, the whole discussion of, integrating technology and moving with the times. So being able to give learners the flexibility to learn when they have the time. That's a really big thing with the mobile app. And Sarah, you were mentioning earlier, about how in a place like Kuruman, there's so much potential, and with the mobile app, there's something like, whoa, learners can download content for offline use. They don't need to necessarily have to have internet access. They can download it, they can complete it, it'll sync when they log back on. That's a real game changer in those kind of more rural areas, which is just really, in the South African context specifically, very exciting. And then finally, integration capabilities that help ensure data consistency across your systems, and not just that, but also, learners log in with one login, no need to remember a password, your branding and those things are integrated. So it creates it's not just another tool in another silo, but it's something that fits into your business systems that you're using and creates a unified experience within your business ecosystem. So really some of the benefits and potential that we've seen within the broader organization when it comes to just the work that we've been doing with our clients. James, thanks for the opportunity. And back to you. I think we're rapidly running out of time, but we have some time to conclude and open the floor for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's so great to be, I think we're actually on 3 continents right now in this webinar, so that's pretty cool in and of itself. And to have worked with you guys closely and helping our shared clients. We have one that migrated, a shared client that migrated within the last year, and since January from their previous, and I don't know that I can call it a learning management system, but their previous professional development and all staff resources, they have moved from more or less a completely shared feeling within their organization that they hated those processes. They hated both the all staff processes and they hated the professional development. And it's truly kind of shared disgust for the way that happened. Moving to Pluto has now have them 97% satisfaction across their organization for both of those things. A complete transformation. And I'm going to credit it to one thing. You mentioned it, Nika, but I'm going to credit it to Pluto has focused on what is needed, not feature bloat. They understand what those outcomes are that I talked about, and they make sure that the system is usable first and foremost. So many LMSs are full of confusing and often unnecessary or very minorly used features, and they look at that as a selling point, and it's not. Keeping things simple is actually important. Thanks for the people that are running, and we'll follow up. But the last couple of things here we want to provide resources. I said that from the beginning and a couple times throughout. We have getting started guides in each one of these domains. They come with solutions and steps to literally get started. They can be followed by templates. We're more than happy to share these tools. The actual job families with the actual competencies, things like that project health check template, and get you started. So we're truly trying to empower and enable, and we're just kind of on the karma wheel, hoping that the good that comes from that is the good that we can all share and kind of raise all boats. So these are guides. We're going to send these two out, I think, along with the LX job families. But we don't want to inundate you. So if there are specific things that I've mentioned, or even things you think that you might need, please ask us, because they probably fit in one of our domains. So I'd encourage and would love to just see your responses on the GPS diagnostic, which we link to, and we'll send a link to out as well. And we have a few minutes. Is there any other either questions, comments, or parting shots? If anybody really wants to tell me what I got wrong today, I would love to hear that.
Also just to latch onto that, we will be sharing these slides and our contact details are in here. So if not now, but please now. But if not now, please do share with us what you'd like to hear more about, what you'd like to learn more about. Like James said, we'd be happy to. They're excited to share those resources, and we'd be super happy to have another one of these sessions if you want to hear more about the additional domains. So do let us know.
If anybody is willing within the last few minutes, what is one thing you're going to take away from this? Thanks, Sarah. Happy to chat with them. I love that takeaway.
Thank you. Yeah, so many of my clients are so manual and just not open to the idea, I think, as one of the participants said. So I'll be definitely saying, I've got someone you need to talk to.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, happy to help. And if you want to catch up one-on-one to talk more about it so I can help empower you too, I'm whatever I can do to help.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. John, there you are. Thanks, John.
Great. I think James will be, a big attribution to the silence is the fact that the South African workday is coming to a close and we're all eager to get home. I think we'll call it there. Thank you again just so much for your time and for your insights. This has been a really fun and informative session. And yeah, I can just echo what James has said. Please feel free to reach out to either myself, to James, to Jackrabbit. Please keep an eye on your emails. We'll be sharing these resources that James has mentioned, and go take the GPS diagnostic assessment and see how you do. And there's some goodies there when you do as well. So I would encourage you to do that. And we're excited to hear from you. So thank you for attending and have a great evening for those who are off, and have a good day for the Americans among us.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Good to see everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I'm going to wait till the last one's gone. Bye.